Tuhan over here. Want to share a story with you. I am all for tracking, right? Used to be a geek engineer, so I love numbers, love to track everything. But in the online world, sometimes tracking things might actually backfire. Specifically, is a tracking number. And I'll tell you why. So one of the biggest ranking algorithm for you to be ranked in Google's local search, it's one of those three businesses, right? If you type in funeral home near me, Google recommends three businesses. If you type in plumbers near me, same thing, Google recommends three businesses in there. And one of the largest algorithm Google looks at is how trustworthy you are. Are you a real business or not? It's very hard for Google to know whether you're a real business or not, right? Even though you've been around in the same location for 50 years, still, Google is just an algorithm, right? It does not know you've been around for 50 years. There's nobody from Google calling you to interview you to see whether you're real or not. So thus the consistency of your name, business name, address, and phone number becomes very, very critical for Google to know whether you're a real business or not. So basically back in around 2009, 2010, the plumbers, what they did in Locksmith, what they did is they genuinely serve multiple cities nearby. So their physical locations here, they're like to game the system. They're going to get a fake address in another city, get a P.O. box here, borrow a friend's address in another city. So that way they generally serve these cities, but so that way they get rank in those cities as well. But from Google's point of view, those are fake listings. You don't physically operate out of those locations, right? You're not supposed to have those fake locations. So how can Google know whether those are fake locations or not? Because some small business owners, they genuinely use P.O. Box, right, as their place of business since they don't want people to know where they live. So how can Google tell? So what Google does is now it will look at other directories, other dominant directories out there. If you're listed on these dominant directories, such as Yelp, and Bing has its own listing, Facebook listing, right? Some of these listings with the same exact name, address, phone number. It's called citation. It backs up to let Google know that you are a real business, right? If you're a business that don't have these listed on these directories, then Google's going to be unlikely to trust you. Because if you're a genuine business, you should be listed on these other directories. So the consistency of name, address, phone number now become very, very critical. Again, name, address, and phone number. Now if you start wanting to track results coming from each of these places, that's where the consistency now will not be accurate from Google's point of view. Name, address, and phone number. It's a third component. You're like, hey, let me get a different tracking number to be placed on Yelp. Let me get a different tracking number to be placed on the website. Let me get a different tracking number to put on my Google listing so I can track results. Okay? Again, I'm all for tracking now, right? If the tracking is just temporarily to get a simple size amount of phone calls you're getting in, or just get a simple size to track how well is your team answering the phone. Again, I'm all for tracking now, right? If business this dictates, not traffic, business practice should dictates, right? But it's negatively impacting, right? If you have, again, Google loves consistent name, address, phone number, so that way it knows that you're real. But you start putting in tracking number across these different directories and website and Google listing, now Google starts to not trust you as much. So if you used to be ranked in the 3-pack in one of those 3 listings, more likely you are going to be dropped out. Or more likely, Google is going to trust somebody else and bump them into the 3-pack and kick you out. right? Not trying to scare you, but that's always been, if you know local search, that's not a secret. Everybody knows that practices search engine optimization knows name, address, phone number has to be very, very consistent. So again, all for tracking, there's a few avenues you might want to track, right? If you cannot track phone numbers by putting them in all different directories, this is what I would recommend, right? So most of these dashboard, right, Google listing, it shows you amount of phone calls that's coming through from your Google listing, right? If Yelp tells you how many phone calls you're getting from your Yelp listing, right? You just go into those portal and can grab it already. If you want to track how many phone calls you're getting from your website, you can put event tracking on there. Anytime somebody taps with their mobile device, tap that click to call phone number, you can track that as an event, right? So there's a lot of things you can track instead of just putting a tracking number on there, right? Putting that tracking number really just screws up the whole Google ecosystem of trusting you. Again, but if your business practice is, hey, you got to be tracking for training purposes, stuff like that, you got no choice, then that's fine. Now, if you know that tracking number is going to be for long periods amount of time, to be placed on your website, long periods amount of time, multiple years, that will basically become your new phone number, then that's fine. Then you have to go back and replace all these places, listings, with that tracking number now, because you want to listen to those phone calls for training purposes to make sure the funeral director who's answering the phone knows how to convert, right, a shopping call. But again, basically I want to wrap this up. It's not a good practice to be putting tracking number in multiple different places. It's due to, if you want to be ranked in the 3-pack, right, which is very critical, people typing funeral home near me, you want to make sure you're on there. They're looking for you already, right? So don't put tracking number. If you do want tracking number, you only stick with one. And that is something you have to use perpetuity though. Then you go back and start replacing all these sources, your website, with that new tracking number. So that way it's consistent. Okay, so just want to let you know the downside of using tracking number. I'm seeing more and more businesses using tracking number, or they just don't know the consequences of that. So kind of want to bring up to you guys.